Happy, happy Christmas that can win us back to the delusions of our childhood days, recall to the old man the pleasures of his youth, and transport the traveller back to his own fireside and quiet home. Marley was dead to begin with. There is no doubt whatever about that.
Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Claire and this is The Wanderlust Way. Thank you for watching, thank you for liking and thank you for subscribing. To show my appreciation to you all for the year that we've just had, I'm going to take you on a different kind of journey. A journey into the past as we dive into the magical, mystical and somewhat ghostly world of a Dickensian Christmas. With the festive season just around the corner, I thought what better way to celebrate how one of the world's most important authors, Charles Dickens and his ghosts, helped shape the way we see Christmas today. In this video, I'm going to share with you some exclusive footage I took on a visit to his home earlier in the year and discuss how his masterpiece, A Christmas Carol, helped to reinvent Christmas. Despite almost 200 years having passed, I think this story is still relevant today. Its message pushing aside the materialistic values that we often put upon Christmas time, and instead focuses on the important and true meaning of the festive season. So please pull up a chair and join me on this festive journey through time. And if you're brave enough, then stay to the end because I have another Christmas ghost story to share with you.
Let us step back in time to the 19th century, where we visit the home of Charles Dickens, a man whose influence on literature and Christmas traditions is immeasurable. Before the release of his famous festive ghost novel, A Christmas Carol, the 25th of December looked quite different to the people of England. Slowly on the decline, the poor working class especially saw it as just an ordinary day of work. Christmas was less communal, less about generosity, and in some ways a second-rate holiday. Many historians believe the banning of Christmas celebrations in the mid-17th century really put a dampener on the season, and even by the time Victoria came to sit on the English throne, things still hadn't really picked up. We owe a lot of our Christmas traditions to Queen Victoria. She certainly embraced the festivities in her palace, but not everybody was catching on. If only somebody could write a ghost story that would scare society so much they'd start to be kinder to one another and practice a feeling of Christmas that would warm even the coldest of hearts. We now know there was only one man for the job. Charles Dickens is today a well-loved author, his books filling library shelves, his quotes still popping up on exam papers, and his characters still embracing our TV screens. It could be easy to imagine he'd always been there, that he was just born into it. But life hadn't been straightforward for young Charles. With his father thrown into a debtor's prison, at just 12 years old he was sent to live and work in a black booting factory. Things could have ended much differently, but they didn't, and instead of giving in to his bad fortune, Charles grew strength from his experiences. Perhaps one day hoping to make a change in this soul-sucking, money-driven world. Those early times echo through his literature, and it is clear that Charles kept the welfare of the poor an issue close to his heart. With this ideology, Charles would go on to popularise the idea that there was a spirit of Christmas, and that it was a generous and warm season that does not require money or wealth, but heart, love and family. Before Dickens, Christmas was often a modest celebration, primarily a time for family gatherings and religious observances, but Dickens saw an opportunity to revive and reshape the season. These rooms, although no longer housing the Dickens family, allow us to imagine what life might have been like, and as I walk around I can't help but imagine the whispers of the past. For the Dickenses, Christmas was a time of joy, generosity and storytelling. Victorian Christmases were to become characterised by feasts, decorations and the exchange of gifts. Dickens himself was always an avid participant, hosting grand parties that included carol singing, games and elaborate meals. Here in the dining room, you can almost picture the Dickens family gathered for a traditional Christmas feast. They might have enjoyed dishes like roast goose, plum pudding, and perhaps even a bowl of warm punch, all while laughing and sharing stories. Dickens and his wife Catherine were known to host many dinner parties here, inviting Charles's friends who included other writers, painters, and even lords. At Christmas, he was even more passionate about bringing joy and warmth into the celebrations, believing this was a time to connect with family, enjoy simple pleasures and give to those in need. It's no wonder that he put such an emphasis on feasts and festive gatherings in his stories. It was his way of promoting a more generous, spirited festive season. Step into the parlour and we can imagine how the Dickens may have spent Christmas Eve here. Its fireplace and windows filled with holly, mistletoe and candlelight, the air thick with the aroma of roasted meats and sweet pastries. Here they might sing carols, play games or even tell stories by the fire. Christmas, Charles believed, was a time to strengthen family bonds and celebrate the spirit of giving. Fascinated by the supernatural, ghost stories were to become a big part of Christmas traditions. In fact, the Victorians believed that Christmas Eve was a time when spirits could walk among us. Standing here, I can almost imagine Dickens himself getting chills as he wrote some of his eeriest passages. In 1843, amidst a challenging year marked by financial struggles and personal losses, Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol. This novella wasn't just a ghost story, it was a social commentary that emphasised compassion, generosity and the importance of family.
And what makes this story so memorable is one person in particular, Ebenezer Scrooge. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone. Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out generous fire. Secret and self-contained, and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shrivelled his cheek, stiffened his gait, made his eyes red, his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. A frosty rime was on his head and on his eyebrows and his wiry chin. He carried his own low temperature always about him. He iced his office in the dog days and didn't thaw it 1 degree at Christmas.
Through the character of Ebenezer Scrooge, Dickens critiqued the harshness of industrial society and highlighted the need for social reform. The ghosts of Christmas past, present and yet to come served as metaphors for introspection, empathy and the potential for change. By the end of the story, as many of us know, Scrooge is hardly recognisable. And to be honest, each time I read the book or watch the movie, I too can't help but feel a little different, a little changed, a little more humble perhaps.
I don't know what to do, cried Scrooge, laughing and crying in the same breath. I am as light as a feather. I am as happy as an angel. I am as merry as a schoolboy. I am as giddy as a drunken man. A Merry Christmas to everybody. A Happy New Year to all the world.
There's no denying that Ebenezer Scrooge and his ghostly visitors helped change the way things were, and Dickens's ghosts continue to have a profound impact on how we celebrate Christmas today. His portrayal of a warm, festive and socially conscious holiday resonated with Victorian readers and helped revive Christmas traditions that had been fading. Practices like sending Christmas cards, decorating homes and charitable giving were popularised through his stories. Queen Victoria helped cement these ideas. She was said to be a top fan of his work and on hearing the news of his death was quoted as saying, "It was a very great loss." Today, when we gather with loved ones, exchange gifts and decorate our homes, we're continuing a legacy that Dickens helped shape. His message of goodwill, kindness and community remains at the heart of our holiday celebrations. But now we reach the part in this story where we must pay thanks to the supernatural, the ghosts, the ghouls, and the very fears that lay in the darkness, waiting for an opportunity to change us. This is the Dickens' bedrooms, a place where the Victorian family would have settled down after a long Christmas Eve, maybe with a bit of nervousness, wondering if a ghostly visitor might appear at midnight. Dickens would have known these traditions well, stories of spirits returning to remind the living of life's precious moments. It's a bit chilling, isn't it, to imagine Dickens in a room like this, lying awake and thinking of the ghosts in his own tales. Maybe on a dark night he too wondered if the flicker of a candle might reveal a spectral figure standing by his bedside.
The air was filled with phantoms, wandering hither and thither in restless haste, and moaning as they went. Every one of them wore chains like Marley's ghost. Some few, they might be guilty governments, were linked together, none were free. Maybe it's time for a Christmas ghost story of our own. A tale to remind us why our English ancestors felt that Christmas and the supernatural went perfectly hand in hand.
It was a snowy Christmas Eve, and the Andrews family had gathered in their cosy front room to celebrate. The fireplace crackled with a warm glow, and the scent of pine and mulled wine filled the air. Mr. and Mrs. Andrews, along with their children, were laughing, playing games, and feeling the joy of the season. Everything seemed perfect, until there was a knock at the door. Startled, Mr. Andrews looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. Who could be calling so late? He opened the door cautiously, only to find no one there. The snow lay untouched, with no footprints on the ground. Shaking his head, he dismissed it as a prank by some neighbourhood children, closed the door and returned to his family. But then, only moments later, the knock came again. Louder this time. Mr. Andrews, a little unnerved, pulled open the door once more. Still, no one was there. As he stepped back inside, a cold chill settled over the room, snuffing out the warmth of the fire. The family exchanged uneasy glances, feeling as though something was watching them. Then, as if by magic, the door creaked open, slowly swinging on its hinges. Mrs. Andrews gasped and instinctively clutched her children close. A shadow appeared in the doorway, a figure draped in a tattered, dark cloak, its face obscured by a hood. Slowly it glided into the room, leaving no footprints on the floor and no trace in the snow behind it. The family huddled together, frozen with fear, unable to move or speak. The figure paused, then turned its head towards each of them as if sizing them up. And then, in a voice that sounded like the wind whispering through bare trees, it spoke. "I am cold, so very cold." Mr. Andrews, trembling, managed to stammer, Who are you?" The figure raised a hand, pointing to the empty chair by the fire, and in a hollow, echoing voice, it replied, "I am the one who was forgotten, the one left out in the cold." The family felt a wave of sorrow and guilt, though they didn't know why. Desperate to ease the growing dread, Mrs. Andrews offered a seat by her fire, but when she reached out to guide the figure to the warmth, her hand passed right through it, touching only icy air. The figure turned to her, its hood shifting just enough to reveal empty, hollow eyes staring from beneath. It whispered once more, "I only wanted to come in to feel the warmth just once more." As the last words hung in the air, the figure slowly faded, leaving behind only a faint, icy mist. The fire sputtered and roared back to life, but the chill lingered, hanging over the room like a ghostly presence. Every Christmas Eve that night, as the clock neared midnight, the Andrews family would hear a knock at the door. They never dared to answer it again, but they would feel that familiar chill seep into the room. And every year they'd leave a chair by the fire, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the uninvited guest might find peace.
Some might think that the uninvited guest was a soul long forgotten by its family, left to wander alone in the winter's air. Others may believe that at Christmas time it's a reminder that nobody should be left out in the cold. So if you hear an unexpected knock on your door on Christmas Eve, well, maybe leave an empty chair by the fireplace just in case.
As we celebrate this Christmas season, it's wonderful to reflect on how traditions have evolved and the stories that continue to shape our festivities. Charles Dickens not only gave us a timeless story, but also rekindled the spirit of Christmas, reminding us of the importance of generosity, compassion, and family. Whether you're reading a Christmas carol by the fireplace, attending a local market, or sharing ghost stories with friends, remember that the essence of Christmas lies in bringing people together and spreading joy.
Thank you for joining me on this Dickensian supernatural journey. And on that note, I wish you all a very merry and magical Christmas.